Hey everyone, Jay Whitner here with Space Headlines. We do a quick recap of the space news each week, and today we're going to be talking about events from the first week of May 2018. Our first news item pertains to Blue Origin. About a week ago, they had another test flight of the New Shepard vehicle, and that prompts sort of an update from them on what's going on with their other projects. Their New Glenn rocket, which is the next version, the next rocket that they'll be working on, is coming along very well. They're still planning to have the first flight of that in 2020. They're also doing some launch pad refurbishment in Florida, getting ready for the New Glenn. And their plans include having the Mission Control Center for New Glenn inside that gigantic building that they've built in Florida, the 750,000 foot building that's right near the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Center. That's where they're going to have their mission control. So things are going well with Blue Origin, and the New Glenn rocket is on schedule. Firefly Aerospace has made some arrangements out in the west to have a launch pad at Vandenberg. The pad they've selected was one that's previously been used for Delta II flights, and with the retirement of the Delta II this year, it will become available. So Firefly is going to take that over. They're going to use this launch pad for both their Alpha and Beta vehicles. The Alpha rocket is an oxygen kerosene rocket, and they're planning to have the first launch of that late next year. The Beta rocket is designed for heavier payloads. It has some side boosters that will be incorporated. Some good news for lunar development. Scientists in Japan have found an unusual mineral inside of a lunar meteorite. So this mineral is called moganite, and it has water locked up inside this mineral. So it's very interesting in terms of the efficiency, the feasibility of having a lunar base. They are projecting that they think there could be up to like 0.5% by weight of water in the lunar soil, the lunar regolith. Excuse me. This means that the base might not have to be located at a lunar pole, like many people have thought in recent years. So we might see a base still at the lunar pole, but maybe an equatorial base instead. So this opens up the possibilities quite a bit. Gwynne Shotwell gave a very nice TED Talk in April. I want to thank Michael Mealing for bringing this to my attention. I somehow had missed it. But some of the highlights of Gwynne's talk were the time scale of Elon time versus Gwynne Shotwell time, and she was sort of put on the hot seat by the interviewer. But she made some very interesting comments in terms of what's going to happen in Gwynne Shotwell time. She is saying that within a decade, we are going to see the BFR doing point-to-point people transport on Earth. Also within a decade, we're going to see the first people walking around on Mars, and they're going to get there using a BFR ship. Very exciting stuff. She also mentioned that the BFR will be able to accommodate payloads up to 8 meters in diameter, which I had not really noticed before. That may be new information. And that they have bigger BFRs in mind for the future. So the BFR that Elon Musk described in his talk in Australia late last year is sort of the BFR Block 1. NASA and the Department of Energy have made a lot of progress on developing tiny nuclear reactors to be used in space. This is really big news, particularly in terms of a lunar base, which is one of our big upcoming steps in space exploration and development. And it's so important because of the time period involved with the lunar day and night cycle. In many cases, you can use solar power in space, but on the moon, it's dark for 2 weeks, and then it's light for 2 weeks. So you have to have huge battery reserves or other energy storage of some sort if you're going to use solar power on the moon. So nuclear would be a great alternative. These power units, they're calling them crusties, can provide up to 10 kilowatts of power for up to a decade. And 4 of these units could power a lunar base. They've come quite a ways in developing this, testing it out. One of the recent milestones was they had a 28-hour test at full power and everything went fine. So very exciting news on the space development front. NASA InSight has left Earth on her way to Mars. This was compliments of an Atlas V rocket. The trip to Mars is going to take roughly 6 months. And what's unique about this particular probe, the InSight, is it's going to be able to dig several meters down into Mars and take unique measurements. Basically, everything that we've really measured in the past pretty much is limited to the surface, so this will give us some subsurface information down to at least a couple of meters. A really big item happened this week, the test firing of the first Falcon 9 Block 5. The test firing went well, and the first launch of the actual rocket itself is scheduled for Thursday, May 10th, which as I'm recording this is tomorrow. So this is going to happen on May 10th, Thursday, between 4:10 and 6:20 Eastern Time, if all goes well. What's really important about the Block 5 is it's going to be the first rocket in history designed for a lot of reuse in a very efficient way. This thing is supposed to fly up to 10 times before you need a lot of refurbishment on the rocket. And potentially you could go through that cycle many times, having 40, 50 launches. Their eventual goal, they hope to have them be good for 100, but that seems a little bit of a stretch. Some of the changes are higher thrust than the prior Falcon 9, has new fairings, titanium grid fins, thermal coating, and this is going to be a very, very exciting thing. This launch happens to be carrying a communications satellite, but really the big news is the rocket itself. How is it going to work on her maiden flight? So be sure to tune in and check that out. A little bit of concern about commercial crew. Boeing and SpaceX continue to make progress on commercial crew, but the General Accounting Office at the government thinks that they may not be ready until 2020. This is a problem in terms of space station crew transfers, and our current deal with the Russians is about to run out. So it sounds like to me that Russia's going to have to negotiate with us. We're going to have to figure out how we can get some more seats arranged for passenger transfers to cover potential delays in the commercial crew being available. NASA's working on a supersonic plane, which is absolutely gorgeous if you see this artist rendering here. As you're probably aware, we had supersonic airplanes for commercial aviation. We had the Concorde, and it was very sexy and very fast. It was very loud, and that was a big problem. So the real breakthrough here is this aircraft is going to be relatively very, very quiet. That on the ground, the plane could fly overhead and you'd barely be able to hear it. So the timeline on this is first flight is targeted at 2021 and commercial flights by 2025. The initial vehicle is going to be about 94 feet long, and it's going to be able to cruise at 940 miles an hour. So that'll be very interesting to see how that project unfolds. Our last item is a congressional item that it's really prompted by some action in the House. That the House passed a bill that called for a study on providing federal grants to spaceports. That they want America to be competitive in space and have a thriving commercial space industry. And I guess they've concluded that the spaceports need some federal government help. So that's what this is all about. We'll see what happens with the Senate and the whole Congress and how things end up. But it's very encouraging that at least the House is thinking that we might want to provide some support to these spaceports. That's it for Space Headlines covering the first week of May. Hope you enjoyed our show. Check back with us in a week or so, and we'll be talking about week number 2 of May 2018. Thanks. We'll see you then.